That jumpsuit you're wearing looks stupid. That's not me talking. It's right here in your file. On other people it looks fine. But right here a scientist has noted that on you it looks stupid. Well, what does a neck-bearded old engineer know about fashion? He probably... Oh, wait, it's a she. Still, what does she know? Oh, wait, it says she has a medical degree. In fashion. From France.
Welcome to EnterVR, the podcast where we talk about everything virtual reality. I am your host, Chris Miranda, and today I am joined by Renee Frissen. Can you please help me with your last name?
Of course, Chris. Thanks for having me. Rene Frissen. It's a Dutch name.
Awesome. And Renee, you are the founder of SocialTech, a startup company that is about to get launched in the next 3 weeks. Tell me more about this company that you're planning on, that you are founding.
Yes, definitely. So SocialTech is founded out of the belief that I think that all the awesome technology that's being developed right now can and should be used for social good. And I have to explain social good because here in the Bay Area, everyone immediately thinks social media. But no, with social, I mean social issues, so stuff like youth unemployment, recidivism, aging, everything that sort of troubles people. And I think that technology can really, really be helpful for this. So what SocialTech does is develop technology to conquer or tackle social issues.
Awesome. And so I met you at the San Francisco Virtual Reality Meetup, where you went up in front of the crowd and you were looking for people who were working in virtual reality that were also doing projects that were doing something along the lines of what you are set on being involved in. And so tell me about that. What is attracting you to virtual reality and social good?
Yes, so I'm looking for people who are either already working on social good projects or just have awesome ideas, because I really want to enter this community of awesome developers, because I think that virtual reality will have a huge impact on essentially, of course, gaming and online experiences, but I'm convinced we can use it for other stuff as well, and I just want to pick your brains to help me understand how we can use this to help improve the life of other people.
That sounds amazing. And so let's figure out. Let's say I am a virtual reality developer. I am working on a software that is helping kids drive better, or
yes, good example.
Yeah. And so what can you offer me as a developer? Because that's obviously the first thing that they're gonna ask you.
Of course, yes. So I'm specifically focused now on the Dutch market, which is a small market, but I'm going to extend this to the European market. And I think that a lot of social issues are somehow related to language. So if you have an anxiety, or if even the driving better is, if you need to know how to drive better, you need to drive better on your own streets. Mm-hmm. So these projects that are being developed, what I'm good at is really understanding how we can bring this to the Dutch or the European market. So that's something I can very concretely bring. But I'm also interested just, to brainstorm together what we can build from scratch together, because we also develop our own technology.
Very cool. And so that's really cool. What is your background before being involved in virtual reality? What has brought you here?
So my background has always been in these social issues. So I started back home when I was in Amsterdam. I started a platform for young professionals who somehow wanted to use their talents to help the lives of others. So what I did, I organized meetings to connect them to nonprofits or social enterprises that could use some serious help. So that's something I'm involved with, and I'm trained as an academic and researcher. I worked at a research institute. I'm currently finishing my PhD. But I've worked a lot in the public sector, so I sort of know my way around in governments, nonprofits, people who build up companies from scratch to help other people. So I sort of speak their language, but I'm also also very involved in the tech world, so I also sort of speak the tech language. I see myself as a connector between these two worlds.
Very cool. How difficult is it for people who are doing social good apps, software, what have you, to be able to not monetize but thrive in the current economy and as the way things are?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because that is of course a challenge. Because it's only interesting to be invested in if you can seriously scale.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening, at least in Europe and also in the United States, is that we see a sort of mix between what citizens are doing, what the government is doing, and what the market is doing. And I can make that very specific, because it means that all these nonprofits that used to be funded and just get money to work are now being invested in. So we are sort of bringing the market thinking to the social good world. And what is super exciting about this is that if you are developing, a social good app or another project, people won't look at you as something like, oh, it's so good, you're helping the poor people, let's give you some money. You think, hey, how can we make this into a business case? So that's also very much my specialty, because I helped founding a nonprofit last year who is focusing on the finance part of these companies. Mm-hmm. And what we do, so we connect the market to the government, to the social entrepreneur, and see how we can scale their impact and to really, make it into a profitable business.
Very cool. How do you respond? How do you respond to people who will say, you don't need technology to do social good. You just do social good.
I say you're partially right. So technology is not the holy grail. Mm-hmm. However, it's really, especially if you live in the Bay Area, but we all know that's sort of a little bubble where we are a little bit ahead of everything else. But it's super, super clear that technology is changing the world, and it's going to change our world even more. For me, it's also very interesting how popular culture responds to this. So, the movie Her, how big this was and how people responded to it. Although for tech people, it's like, no, it's not going to be this way. But it means that people are changing their mindsets and accepting that, hey, okay, let's sit back for a minute and realize how big this influence is going to be. So it's not even a choice, should we use tech for social good? It's even the question, how can we use tech as good as possible for social good? That's totally my conviction.
I totally agree. And so what ways do you see yourself, in 5 years, for example, and this is, one of these crazy questions, where would you like to see yourself doing?
I like to see myself still running SocialTech, of course, and having it grown to a large company that's not only making profit, but it also enables young developers and young people who want to be involved in social good to be invested in. So I'm doing this to grow, and I'm a social enterprise to make profit in order to invest in this sort of infrastructure of people who will bring changing the world together with using technology. Because I don't know what about you, but all my friends who have done all these very expensive educations, and if they work at a sort of consultancy firm, they always say, yeah, I like it, but what if I could use all this talent and knowledge to also improve the world? So I think we need to bring these worlds together as soon as possible.
It's not a myth to say that the tech industry is more or less a sausage fest, and so I think that what you're doing by making VR, making technology your own and using it for social good, I think it has mass appeal. How do but in terms of the gender gap, how do we bring more women into virtual reality?
That's a very awesome question, and I just recently learned the term sausage fest, which I think is awesome. I'm trying to sort of integrate it into the Dutch language to see if we can have it there. So that's funny, but no, what I really like about being here, because that's also another chapter of my life, that I'm currently traveling the world to really study all these ecosystems where tech is being evolved. So I've been in Berlin, a little bit in New York, now here in San Francisco. I'm going to Shanghai, Bali, Singapore. So to really understand what are people thinking about and what are they making. But what I really like here in the Bay Area is that this gender gap is being really, really addressed. So believe it or not, but I volunteered at this conference 2 weeks ago. There was lesbians who tag, and then between brackets, and people who love them. So there was an audience of 1,000 women who were all developers or somehow related to technology, and they were really focused on this issue: how can we bring more women in this field? And it's a tricky question, because you have, for instance, black girls who code, or chicks who code, or you have many meetup groups here or other groups that are, to strengthen and empower women. But I strongly believe, because back home I'm pretty much involved in this whole gender movement, that it should be an inclusive dialogue. So we can have all these women communities, and I think it's good to feel empowered. Yeah. However, I think we need to step beyond this. So we need to create an environment where men and women talk about this issue. That's why I really like that you asked me this question, because we together should talk about this. And it's maybe a very easy answer, but of course it has a lot to do with education. But it also has a lot to do with the world you grow up in. So if as a girl you grew up in an environment where it's totally fine, to explore tech and build stuff, then you have more chances that you feel free to choose this career path. And there is a very cool company called Goldie Blocks. I think it was on a Super Bowl ad, so that's why probably a lot of people...
Oh yeah, I saw that commercial. That was
funny. Yeah. It's I think we need very practical and also a little bit funny stuff like this to show girls and women and men, let's not forget them, men, that there is not such a thing as a gender profession. Yeah. There's only a cultural belief about how gender should be. So I think that we should just start, if all the techies have kids, raise them as whatever they want to be. At our meetup, one of the guys brought his daughter. She had a blast. She fit in perfectly. Everyone adored her. I felt like, okay, cool. She could be the next, founder of an amazing, cool startup.
Definitely. So that that is something that I do think about. How can we bring more women into virtual reality? Because I think this technology is going to touch the lives of many people and across all genders. In fact, I think it's 40% of all, or 45% of all gamers are women, and I don't think they are. Sure, there are really strong lead roles in video games like Ellie from The Last of Us and Tomb Raider, Lara Croft, but there I don't think. I still think that it's a very male dominated industry, and
Of course, it's really sad even because women are usually used as a sort of support character for the men. Even if she's a leading character, it's designed to be either be sexually attractive or to fulfill very, very stereotyped gender roles.
What about, so in terms of the question of sex appeal, how does that get addressed in a way that it makes it sexy for both genders to play video games, not just for men but how does that, can we make sexy games for women that are not demeaning? Is that possible?
It's a good and it's a hard question, because there's already then an idea that there is a difference between how men and women experience games, so that I would need something very differently from you. Yeah. And I think it's partially true, and I think it's partially not true. But I read this, I'm looking it up now, but I cannot find it. But there was a review on a new game that came out where you are a 16-year-old girl, I forgot the name, that's really, really terrible of me, but she needs to, get out in the world, whatever all the video games do. But this girl, who wrote the review, she's been an experienced gamer, and she said, when I finished the game, I cried, and I never done that before, and I cried because I sort of lost my first female game character friend that I felt so close to. And why? Because she was also killing all the bad people, but she also had a female friend, and she also cried when stuff went wrong. So it was a really round character. It was not a stereotype.
Nice.
Either I'm Lara Croft and I have big boobs, but I'm very cool, blah, blah, blah. But it was everything. So I think you make it appealing to make it more diverse and less stereotyped.
Yeah.
And that's very abstract, but I really think that's the way to go. To not sort of be tempted to either use the female stuff, like, so she's very sensitive or whatever. No, just make a very cool, awesome person.
Yeah.
Whether being it a boy or a girl.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. I think I think they asked. I remember seeing a quote somewhere. The writer for Game of Thrones. His name escapes me. Sorry, internet blasphemy. But he said something about how someone was interviewing him, and they were like, How do you come up with all these strong female roles? And he said something like, well, they're just strong roles. He doesn't. It's not really about female, male strong roles. It's just a strong person. And
it was awesome. I saw this talk by the guy who made Avatar.
Oh yeah.
And he had this actually the same sort of sketch where he addressed this question every time. So how do you come up with all the strong female roles? And he just gave 20 answers, like, because my mother and my grandmother were very strong women. And he ended with, this is such a stupid question, please never ever ask me again. Because, women are strong. Of course, it's not hard to make strong female characters.
Definitely. So, virtual reality and going back to social good,
Yes.
what are different things that you sent me a message and I saw recidivism. Was that in the context of people going to prison and lowering the recidivism rate? Do you have any ideas in terms of? So my question is, do you have any ideas already buzzing in your head in terms of what virtual reality can do for social good?
Yes, tons. I think they're already happening very cool. So there are a lot of people out there who are already using this. I think VR is being, especially in the scientific environment, mainly used to improve the life of others. But these are very complicated health issues or traumatic issues or people who have autism. That's one of the talks we saw at the VR meeting. But if you make it a little bit more simpler and if you really use the game environments that are being created, I think even as a training environment to reintegrate people into society, for instance, homeless people, if you can make them experience what it's like to actually live in a house again. One of the hardest things to convince people to not be homeless is because they don't want to live in a house somehow. Because they feel in a box, they feel enclosed, and usually if they start living in a house, their life improves. That's also a consequence. So how can you sort of make them used to this environment? Virtual reality, perfect solution. Recidivism too. What if you're in jail and you're going to be released in a month or 2 months and you've been in there for 10 years or even shorter? How is real life going to be like for you? How can you get used to, going to a job, waking up early, that kind of stuff? Young parents who are doing not such a good job in parenting, how can you create an environment to teach them how to raise their kid without harming the kid already? Like, there are so many very basic ways to integrate it, let alone for the very complicated traumatic experiences or burning victims experiences.
That's such a enlightening, eye-opening thing you said about sort of, because here's the thing. The other day I was at Servio's trying out the zombies on the holodeck, and I remember telling these guys, and I was shooting zombies up and down, and cutting them down with an axe. And I remember telling these guys, you guys are. This is a simulation training for when the zombie apocalypse happens, and what you're doing is you're training me you're training me for the zombie apocalypse, and but it doesn't have to go that far because we can train people for real life, which is what you're saying. I think that is just as positive and valuable as preparing for the zombie apocalypse, and so like job training, for example, or
Yes.
man, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, just only training. But what if if you can make a virtual classroom and people can really interact with the avatars together, and you can have a very diverse classroom that also it doesn't only open up education possibilities, but it also opens up interacting with other cultures and other people and different languages. There's so many benefits if you can sort of bring people together in a way that they physically experience it. Because that's the thing. My first VR experience was very recent, and I was amazed by the influence on my physical experience. It's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't tried it, and of course all your listeners are pros, so I don't have to tell them this. But still, I think it's good for me to have to keep this memory fresh of how it is to really interact in this environment, because it can make such a huge difference on people. Because the people I'm aimed at are not the average, I'll just spend $300 on a VR kit people. It's going to be a really big exception for them to use this.
Yeah, it's true. And so, in terms of bringing virtual reality to low income people, what sorts of ways, what sorts of ideas do you think could be useful in implementation?
Yeah, that's a hard question, because it's always it comes across as a luxury good as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you start talking about this, people either are already like, what? Are you out there? Virtual reality is so far away. Mm-hmm. And also like, it's going to be costing tons of money. But I just, I named the price $300, and then again, that's even not so much.
Yeah.
If you know how much is spent to people who are ineffectively helped, then $300 is really, really not a lot. So to bring it to low-income people, I'm not sure exactly how to do this, but if you know that technology is getting cheaper and cheaper every year, I think it's going to be a matter of time where we either, accept that it's within your insurance package, or that you can sort of get a discount if you're low income. And I think that's the difference between the Netherlands or perhaps Europe and the US, how that's, being handled by the government. But I was already discussing this with people back home, and they say, no, we have this budget, per family, and $300 is not even so much to take it in, so we could definitely discuss this.
That would be awesome. Because what do you think? I mean, I love the fact that you are working with virtual reality and social good, doing positive things. But because of, in my opinion, humanity has this duality to it. For every really, really good thing out there, there is something just extremely bad. Do you spend a lot of time thinking about, what could go wrong, what could be used for bad things in virtual reality, or are you focused on your
No, I think that's the one thing that shocked me the most being here in the Bay Area, how little ethical discussion there is about the role of technology. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking this a little bit more broad than just VR, mm-hmm. but technology in general. It's of course, it's really, really not so hard to see the counterpart of everything. A lot of friends of mine are reading now The Circle from Dave Eggers, and although some people say it's not the best prose I've ever read, it's eerie how he sketches this future of technology, where actually this sort of optimism about technology really turns bad. I haven't read the book yet, so I still need to read it, but it is, of course, very much linked to the privacy question, and I'm not sure how this relates to virtual reality. But what would be something you think that could go bad in VR specifically?
For me, I think it could be used to grab a Guantanamo Bay detainee and strap his hands down and put a VR helmet on his face and make him go through mind-torturing experiences, or that is the extreme. But also for people in general, I think they could go wrong by, VR could either enhance the way we look at reality, or it can detract and distract us from reality, from seeing the truth of life. And so from in a sense, I'm worried that it could dumb us down. That's why I'm a big proponent for virtual reality journalism, so that you can see the world through the eyes of people who don't have the lawyers and lobbies to get your attention.
Yes.
So, but yeah, and also addiction. I think people. It's such a strong medium. It's such a strong, it feels like, because when you're in there, it just feels like you're somewhere else. Your brain, I don't think your brain can really distinguish what's real, what isn't anymore. And so for that matter, I think addiction can be a thing that will have to be addressed, and we'll have to have conversations on as the technology progresses.
But, yeah, and I think the problem now is that people who see these, counterparts, their answer usually is, we should not have technology, or they're really opposed to the development of technology, other than just accepting that it's already there and it's going to grow.
Yep.
And to see how can we then sort of ensure that it's not being used. Because I think, although your first answer to the question is extreme, of course, but that's not so hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Of course you can create awful worlds, it's going to be like a Clockwork Orange, but then with VR. Imagine, that's horrible, that's awful. And to say, I was testing the Tuscany demo that's on the VR,
mm-hmm.
and when I walked up the stairs, I got really nauseous.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine, enhancing this and completely fucking up your whole, excuse me for the language, bodily experience. The question is, however, this is a question of power.
Yeah.
Who is gonna, own the VR and use it? And I think one way to ensure that this is always something that is in the back of people's minds is to have this discussion.
I agree. Yeah, I think yeah, the most important thing that we could have is have a free flow of information and conversations about what is it that as a society we accept, and what is and what isn't acceptable. I think that's very, very, very insightful. What about adult content in virtual reality? What's your take on adult content?
Well, if I use that for something that's probably the most difficult question is because VR is already being experienced for people who are pedophiles, and that's of course a really big ethical question. Can you do this? Can you create a world where adults can even have sex with children?
You mean the internet is being used, or VR is being used as we speak to?
No, I don't think VR is being used, but I think that or maybe it is, I don't even know, but there was this, it's really bad that I forgot, but there was this NGO that created a little girl.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she was used to catch predators, you know, so that's using VR in terms of law and punishment. But what about creating sort of therapy environments where pedophiles can, learn to deal with their mental issues around this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't have the answer, but I definitely think that's going to be a very interesting perspective. But then it means that you really separate reality from the VR world, saying that in the VR world everything can happen, and in reality we have a lot of constraints. So I'm very interested in how if we're gonna have laws in virtual reality, if we're gonna have stuff you cannot do there, if you can be a criminal in virtual reality. But okay, that aside, adult content. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. It at least it means that no women or men are harmed or being forced to do this because it's all generated. So in that sense, I think it's a good development.
Yeah, I think it's especially what is it? There's 60 million men in China that will never find a wife. I think they could use. They could use some help, some release, some something.
Mm-hmm. The only question, the difficult question is, then you give them a specific women image.
True.
And what does it mean for their interaction with women in real life? Because if you can have it designed all the way you want, well, chances are pretty big it's not going to be a very emancipated female image.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Yeah, That's a toughie.
Yeah.
That is a toughie. Going back to what you said, I like what you said earlier about how using virtual reality to one day help treat people with pedophilia issues. I like how you turned it around. Yes, it could be used, for perverts that want to, do evil things to children, but it could also be used to help them rewire their brain somehow with therapy and help. So I like that you can see how this can be used for either or. Really, that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely, because it's really the thing. What's behind this is how you approach these people. And in this, I think this is an interesting subject because it's the hardest subject for everyone in the world. If it comes to children, people are, even the most open-minded people become very rigid. It's sort of a border you don't cross. You don't touch children, and that's completely logical. Everyone with children, I don't even have them, but it's clear. There's no discussion.
For sure.
However, if you go into this theme and field and people who do like to have sex with children, these are usually people that have problems and issues. And, how should we treat them? As criminals? Or should we try to sort of improve their lives and therewith the lives of others? I would always prefer the last one. And I think VR could be, an amazing opportunity for this.
Yeah, as soon as they cross the line, whether they actually did something wrong in real life, I mean, that's no, in my question, there's no question, but I feel like, if they seek the help before the act, I think, we shouldn't, if someone needs help, someone asks for help, I think we should figure out ways to help them.
Yeah, and what my problems are with the Predator story is that you're really crossing this gray area where you sort of already punished someone before they did something.
Mm-hmm.
So, in this whole age of where the terrorism law making, also in the Netherlands, has had a huge effect on sort of preliminary actions, VR can also turn very dark, because you can sort of, make people do stuff in VR and punish them in real life. And I'm not sure if we want to go this way.
Yeah, in terms of VR and crime, I wonder how, and I asked Eric Greenbaum, an attorney earlier, about, will we have an actual thing where in the real world we will have laws that will, all of a sudden we will have VR criminals, and what is VR crime going to look like? That is, and I think perhaps, yeah, you are walking a gray area in terms of that, I mean, because the whole hentai phenomena from Japan, right? It's basically, they man, and I am so out of my water here. I am in a very uncomfortable zone, but this is what we're here for. This is why we do this, because we have to have these conversations. But in terms of, I mean, what is, why should it matter if I'm having VR sex with a hentai underage? I mean, would that be considered a crime? And in my mind, I'm like, it's creepy as fuck, but who am I to tell you if you're doing it by yourself with your little fleshlight in your apartment late at night? I mean, that's weird, but I don't know.
No, I know, but the question is, what is the step to, fantasies?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be punished, if we develop software that somehow enables us to visualize our thoughts? Can we be punished for this? I would be in jail by then. Everyone would be, because it's really hard to make a distinction then between your actions and your thoughts. And is VR an action or is it a thought? And I think that's a gray area, because it's not only an action or a thought, because it's being developed by people. We create this environment. We interact in this environment. So I don't know. I'm sorry, Chris. I don't have the answer either. But it's a discussion we should keep having.
Yeah. We'll work it out. We'll
okay.
sometime in the future. It's just Thank God for freedom of speech. Yeah, I think.
I really like what you said about VR journalism, because I was just imagining the other day that what if we had, I know the cameras that are being developed now for VR, so the 3D cameras that you can, have a real live content in your VR.
Mm-hmm.
What if you have that right now in Ukraine and in Kiev and what's happening there? It would mean that in 50 years we could go back live to what's happening there. You could walk on the square. You could walk through the protest. How insane is that we can sort of have a real life version of history? That's that sort of possibilities are mind blowing.
Yeah, that's world changing. Like that would change the world, because all of a sudden we wouldn't, governments and politicians wouldn't have the ability to spin the truth. They'll be like, Putin will say there's no Russian soldiers in Crimea, and then we'll patch into VR and we'll be like, dude, what the fuck? There are.
But the tricky thing, of course, and that's always been sort of, you need to be a little bit careful with this optimism as well, because this has always been the promise of also photography and film and now VR, that finally we'll have a one-way access to the truth. But even with VR, it's always a perspective you put on, and it's always a context you're coming from with which you look to the future, or the history or whatever.
True.
So we need to be careful to think we have direct access to the truth. However, it's even in terms of experience, it's gonna change so much. Imagine going from oral history to textbooks to photos to film to VR. That's crazy.
And then the next step after VR is gonna be telepathic, communication. Yeah. That I cannot wait for. But then it's gonna be weird, because I don't want everybody to, hear the thoughts inside my head. I have some weird thoughts, man. Last night I had a weird dream about I was in a foot race, and in this foot race I was in Nicaragua. The foot race started in Nicaragua, and then next you know it, I was running like Sonic in a Sonic the Hedgehog kind of world, followed by Taipei. It was a VR world foot race, and at the end I lost. It sucked. I lose in my own dreams. It's okay. But in terms of in terms of VR and dream sharing, like, I think, that's another tangent that I think about. Like, one day we will be able to map out the dreams inside of our heads, and we will be able to show, I'll be able to go up to you and Renee, hey, let's check out the dream I had last night. You'll be like, no, stay away from me.
I just wanted to say, like, no, Chris, no thanks, I'm okay. Yeah, however, what if you can program your dreams?
Ooh.
You plug it into VR somehow while you're asleep, and the dreams are projected for you.
Wow.
Now we're entering the...
Well, this is what we're here for. We're here to enter the rabbit hole. Right? Every conversation I have, I always enter the rabbit hole. So don't be scared to embrace the crazy, because I think...
The thing is, what I like about it means that VR really plugs into your creativity. It enables you to envision stuff that's way out there, but let's start trying to make it. That's really cool about it. And I want to plug in this creativity, especially to help the lives of others.
Yeah, no, I think that hits the point right there, because I walked away from college with a political science degree, and I had all of a sudden this knowledge of more or less. I had dipped my toes in the halls of power, specifically here in San Francisco, and after a few months of an internship and learning about this, how this political game works, I walked away depressed. It was sad, because I had come to the realization that politicians are just puppets of people with money, and sure, there's the good guys here and there. You got your Elizabeth Warren here, and your Barney Frank, and even Ron Paul to some extent sometimes. But they're the exception to the rule. The rest of them are just shitbags, and so that's why I am so energized by technology, by this thing called the future, because history hasn't been written yet, and here we have right now around us this moment that we can capture, and we can we can make the world better, really. Just because people give up on the world, like it's gonna end, or we're not gonna solve the problems of the world, it's because you've let go of your imagination, buddy. I'm not. I know. If you ask me right now, I can tell you how I can solve climate change. I just need $1 billion, and yeah, that's all I need, and I will solve you climate change. But for you, what is your motivation in technology? What is the thing that keeps you going?
Well, it's interesting that you explain a little bit more about your background, because that's the world I work with, and I must say in the Netherlands you have a bigger distinction between the politician and the people who make the policy.
Oh,
so
cool.
there is a little bit more continuously in the people who make the policy, and they are less influenced by money streams or whatever. But basic line why I'm interested in technology in terms of this social good, because I think that the government is there to assist in the end us as citizens, and how can they use this technology boom to reach us better, to make a better democratic environment, to open up policies, open up money streams. And it sounds maybe a little bit like something that's out there, but back home I have already these conversations with local governments, and like here in San Francisco, what they're doing with the open data SF, that's amazing. They open all the data they have to access for social entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs to localize communities that need help. Or it's really how these two systems can be integrated so that technology can be used as a tool to empower people. Everyone, I think, in a democratic process, and specifically the people who are being born and who are already one step behind.
I think you're right. I think you are 100% right. In terms of if you want to make VR successful, if you want to make technology, progress and catapult humanity into the future, I think you have to include all parties involved, and
yes,
that be
and
government.
It's too easy. I'm sorry to say this, but it's also too easy to write them off as the bad guys.
Yeah.
Because even if that were true, and I doubt it, you need them. They make the decisions. They are gonna, decide if we are we gonna give Chris $1 million or $1 billion for climate change or not. So you need to include them in a dialogue, and not to make it too complicated to enter. It would be really interesting to see how can we make this tech world and this VR world as accessible as possible for people who are, not that knowledgeable or not that skilled, or simply don't have the background.
Yeah, we're all you're right. We're all in this together. Both us, the people trying to do something, the people with the mouth that want people like you getting out there, and the shitbags, that we're all in this together.
You have this innovation office from the San Francisco government that was installed by the mayor.
True.
Invite them to the meetup and have them, let their imagination run wild. What we can do together. That would be super awesome.
That would. Thank you for the idea. I think I might send an email soon. That'd be awesome. So, for you and so in social entrepreneurship, what is your biggest challenge? Nowadays.
The biggest challenge is the center of my company, bringing these worlds together, and that's because the social world is also a little bit afraid of technology, because there is this idea that it will decrease human contact, and that it's weird to change technology for labor that's been done by humans usually.
Yeah.
So the biggest challenge will be to really be able to find a good narrative and find good examples to show people that we can actually benefit from this, and it doesn't decrease our social, possibilities.
I think you're right. And sorry if you're saying something. Sorry.
No, that I was finished.
You're right. I think there is that, especially in that area, in people who are doing social good. I think there is. I don't know if it's fear or ambivalence or just hesitation towards embracing technology. I come from, I spent my teenage years working in the environmental movement. From 14 to 18, I was putting together global warming fairs, putting together environmental justice plays, and I go back to that world, and I still feel like people are still thinking in the same mentality as in like grassroots movement, which is great, But I think, in my opinion, that in the 21st century, you have to embrace technology. You have to use it as your tool, because you are competing against people like the Koch brothers, who have billions of dollars and lobbies and lawyers and fuck tons of money. And so what do we have? What do the people have? We have to, we have numbers, but we need to use this tool called technology to our advantage. I think that's why the environmental movement, and I know people are going to hate on me for this, but I think the environmental movement as we speak is dead. And if we want to revitalize this movement, to bring back, true environmentalism and caring about the planet we live on, because it's not about the planet, it's really about humanity. How do we sustain humanity?
Definitely. Well, I think that's an interesting point, because in terms of the movement, I don't even know, but I really understand your point. However, if you look at the technology, and that this is more the hardware technology that's being developed for the clean tech movement, that it's amazing what they are doing right now. So what I really like about this movement, well, of course, of our all idol Elon Musk, what his goal is just to make the fastest, coolest car possible. Oh yeah, and make it also electrical, so that, for him it's not even a question anymore. It's not a moral value that he's trying to create. He's just trying to create something really cool for us to use.
Yeah.
Although I think it's really important to stress the moral and the ethical consequences of what he's doing. I actually see a quite large environmental movement that is embracing technology to sort of really develop stuff that's gonna, make sure that we're not dying all in 70 years.
I hope so.
But then that's something different from the movement that's communicating itself. So how can we use technology to express these standpoints that we have? So I think maybe that's two different things. I'm not sure if you agree, but I'm pretty hopeful about the environmental movement. However, we need to, speed up the process.
I agree. If there's one thing that I think that you hit on is the clean energy thing that is inside my mind for a lot. I mean, I think about, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna use? Air, wind. Same thing. Geothermal, wave power, solar power. We got this giant fucking volcano in Yellowstone, and I can't for the life of me think who wouldn't want to tap into that source of energy somehow. And so but in my mind I feel like we have this losing battle against oil and the petrol companies, because they are the puppet masters of the politicians, who make the laws that will make protesting against Keystone illegal. I mean, it's happening. I agree, and just what you said. I don't know if it's happening fast enough. But you know what it is. You know what's gonna happen, because humanity is so reactionary. We're not. I can't think of a time when really humans were super proactive about something. Global climate change will make us react, and it's gonna be sad because some of us, the crazy ones, saw it coming, and yet the masses will have to realize when something bad happens.
What about how we're using VR for this, just to create a sort of time loop to fast forward 100 years and see what happened if we still use oil?
I like your style. I like your style because you're right. And education is a huge thing. You're right. You think about all the things that we can solve in the world if we had proper tools of education, and you have right there the answer. VR could be a really good tool for education.
I think because it makes you experience stuff. It's very basic and it's very logical, but really don't underestimate the power of that. Mm-hmm. I've been writing a lot in the newspaper back home about some topics, and it's always really hard to reach people with words. So especially in this time and area, we need all the visual tools we can get to sort of envision a future world that we are wanting, heading towards to. But you can also use this to envision what will happen if Shell keeps being the largest player in the market, and if Elon Musk somehow is able to create this whole electrical network in the world to charge our cars. And then perhaps that's a challenge. Let's have a hackathon, environmental hackathon for VR. I don't know.
I'm down for that. Definitely. That was we're gonna leave it on that note. That is super positive. I think that there's hope for the future. I'm so excited that you came on the show to bring your perspective, because we need more perspectives such as yours, and we definitely need more women involved in virtual reality for sure.
Thank you, Chris.
So thank you for being such an awesome person, not just a woman, but being awesome all around. and yeah, how can people stay in touch with you? How can people so we're putting the call out. If you're working on something good that does social good in virtual reality, get in contact with you.
Yes. Below your podcast, I saw there are all these addresses. I'll just add my Twitter account and my email. Is that an idea, or should I just tell them?
Yeah, no. We'll add your Twitter account in your email, and if you can say it really quick, that would be well.
Yeah. So it's Renee, RENEE @societyimpact.nl. That's my email, and you can follow me on Twitter at RTLF. Those are my initials.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. It was such an awesome conversation.
Thank you, Renee. Have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.